For a founder out there, an early stage investor, how do you guys in your work, just quickly to set the table, how do you guys define what a Series A is today, or let's say to start in 2015?
Sure, so we're doing priced rounds that are typically $3 to $5 million in size. We call it sprout stage investing or strategy, which is obviously super similar to what post-seed is. So it's really typically that first institutional round of capital, and we're doing priced rounds, not notes.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just say it can be as small as for Storm, $500,000 a Series A. I mean, this whole concept of what's a seed and Series A that we've been talking about today, it's lost a lot of its meaning over the last 10 years. I started Storm 15 years ago, and it used to mean a lot what was a seed, what was Series A, what was Series B. But today we're looking at deals, we're pricing, price rounds, I guess, is part of the definition, but it could be as small as $500,000 to maybe $2, $3 million on an A.
So as it's lost its meaning, you said something interesting. What does that mean for somebody starting their company or just started that company? How do they deal with that change?
Well, I mean, I think there's probably two sides to that. I think entrepreneurs, it was mentioned, I think on the panel before with Paul, that I think investors are sensitized to wanting to be early stage. You kind of find this barbell. You find investors like to be very early, or they like to be late. You find very few that say, oh, I want to do the Series B round. There's very, very few of those. So I think one piece of advice to entrepreneurs is that focusing on seed, Series A, keeping it early is definitely a good strategy, I think, to raising money until you start to break out. And then everybody wants to invest and doesn't care what the letter is.
Okay, Gil, please.
Yeah, I would agree and say it's actually even worse than that. I've participated in a $20 million seed, which confused me a little. We just had a $3.5 million A get done, except the entrepreneur called it a seed because he wants to be able to do an A later. I mean, I think it's entirely, my argument is it's whatever the entrepreneur wants it to be. Seed, A, I don't care.
But eventually the investor may think of it differently. So who gets the right to call what it is?
Yeah, I would argue the entrepreneur decides what it is. I mean, I saw Seed 5, the 5th round of seed in a company, which sounded really horrible. So to me, I mean, one way of thinking of it as an entrepreneur is it $5 million? Notionally $5 to $10 million is now a real round, where $1 million, $2 million can often be a party round with no lead. That's one way of thinking of it. Priced is another way, although I saw a capped note with a floor and a cap at the same price with pro rata rights, at which point I'm not really sure what the difference is between a note and equity. I mean, I think, it's really whatever is in the eye of the beholder, but I would say $5 to $10 million is a real round, and you can call that an A.
Well, just to add to that, I think for the entrepreneurs in the crowd, it does matter to some investors. So, it is what the entrepreneur wants to call it, but, if your investor is early, then, call it an early stage
You're
round.
kind of getting into what the psychology is, right? And so you meet a lot of people and they think, oh, I'm going to raise my seed and then, I'm going to go raise my A, and the sort of the vocabulary takes over, right? But that doesn't necessarily meet the reality. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah,
how do you rationalize a $20 million seed round?
Yeah, so Josh, share your perspective from Greylock.
I think this is all very good perspective on what are these names. We like to say we do Series A's and B's, but I think to take sort of Gil's nomenclature, we like to write checks sort of between $5 and $10 million, become sort of the first real institutional capital, become your real partner to your company. In that stage, we love to own around 20% of the company and really be your lead key partner to build a company over the next 10 years. And we mean that from the moment that we invest, we're hands-on on your board, hopefully working with you as much as we can, help you build the team, everything else for the full journey of the company, whatever it takes. I think a lot of these earlier investment rounds are often intended to be sort of smaller capital, part of your company for the first couple of years, and sort of so you get off the ground and then it's sort of not be as active. And so we really look for that. And then in the Series B, we look at companies that might have already raised that sort of first institutional capital, $5 to $10 million, but are now really expanding and they're looking for another partner to come in and again, join the board, take a hands-on role. We write checks, $10 to $20 million at that stage. We still like to take a board seat and really, again, become your partner for the next 10 years of the journey. And, what's surprising is that sort of Series B is even happening, sometimes within a year of that first Series A. But that's really, how we think about it is a large check and really become your hands-on partner.
Good rock star entry, Alastair.
What's
Well
that?
done.
Good rock star
A little
entry.
rainy.
They told me to moonwalk in, but I don't think that would work very well. Hi, everyone. What did I miss? Well, hi. Well, thanks for. How much did I miss? It was just a couple
We
minutes.
just
Discovery.
redefined
Just
all
a
the
little.
terms.
That was it. That was it. We solved the crisis. Did we do a poll of the audience? Do we know who's here?
No, please.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. I'm Alastair. Sorry I'm late. True story. I was in New York yesterday, and I think it was an easier ride. It was an easier flight home than it was to get to San Francisco here today. So I apologize, but thanks for coming out. Did you guys introduce yourselves, or
Yes, we
Okay.
did. We sort of did.
you sort of did?
But do a poll. I think it's a great idea.
Okay. So we have Josh Gill, Ryan, and Larry. Well, thank you. Who do we have in the audience here? I'd like to see a show of hands of people who are entrepreneurs. So keep your hands up so we can see. So more than half, I would say. How many of you have raised or are raising a seed round? So there they are. I would say more than half. Well, where to begin? Other than switching places with Samil, did we define seed?
We were sort of trying to run through it. I mean,
Post-seed, I should say.
one
Larry.
thing that we've seen with these naming definitions is if a company actually has its core tech done but doesn't have the product, it makes more sense to call it a seed. That way, when it's actually launched, it can do an A. But I agree. I think it is ultimately up to the entrepreneur. And what matters more is who's the quality of that partner, that you're bringing to the table. I think one other thing that we didn't quite hit is sort of what Josh is highlighting, which is the difference between funds that are trying to put small amounts of money in a very wide range of companies and not necessarily have deeper involvement versus funds that are trying to build a very concentrated portfolio where the capital that they're putting into that round is meaningful and a core part of the strategy, and they are actually willing to become board members, directors of the company and be actively involved as company builders over the long term.
Well, even that has some limits, right? I mean, like Hunter Walk has a great seed fund and takes board seats and is very active and considers himself institutional money with 750 grand. So I would argue a lot of this is really very blurred, and it's just it ends up being, to your point, board seats and size of the check. Another way I think of it is, until I've raised an A, I'm hypothesis testing, right? I'm
Explain that. What
trying
do you mean?
something, I'm trying to see if it works. I'm trying to get to a scale where people go, wow, that's interesting. And then the A almost is expansion capital or growth capital.
So does that mean you guys look at seed or as like the new A, or how would you define that? You all are shaking your heads, Josh.
No, but I think the reality is, and Keith said this very well with Open Door, there are some companies that require more capital even to do the hypothesis
That's your
testing.
mic
We're just
feedback.
as happy to write that check and actually say, here's $8-10 million round. You haven't launched yet. You might not launch for 6 months or a year, but we're really bullish on that. Or you have a very clear theory, and we're bullish on giving this team several years of runway in order to keep iterating and hypothesis testing. So whenever you're raising money, you really want to think about how much money do I need to prove the next milestone that I'm on my way, and how long do I really want? And some people want 2 or 3 years to kind of get to that milestone. They'll raise more money if they can, and we're happy to fund that in certain cases with certain hypotheses. Or you'll raise, I only want $1 million because I want to prove with $1 million that this thing will work, or if it doesn't, I'll figure out what else to do with the company or my own time or life. So that's sort of why you raise $1 million.
There's a big group of entrepreneurs out here. What advice do you have for them there's competition is fierce. There's lots of entrepreneurs trying to raise post-seed, Series A, or what are some good tips or strategies you have for these people out here in the post-seed world that we live in?
Well, just pick up on what Josh was saying.
Sure.
So they like to, Greylock likes to write $5-10 million checks,
Yes.
targets 20%. So you should know the audience you're going to meet with. So if you come to Storm, we're not going to write a $10 million check. We'll write 5. We don't need to own 20, but we like to own somewhere between 10 and 15. So it's a little bit different. And if you come into our office and you want to raise 10, it's tough for us because it's hard for us to lead a $10 million round if we're going to be writing a small check. So I think, one piece, and I see it all the time, people come in and they don't really know the firm that they're meeting with. It's all out there. We all blog. It's all very clear what we do. So, come in kind of knowing who your audience is and have that financing strategy, appropriately set.
Great advice. Gil, what size checks do you write? What are you looking for?
I guess I'm the only one here who has the luxury of saying we don't have rules on this stuff. So
Targets, not rules.
Yeah,
All rules get broken.
We don't even
trust
have
me.
targets. No, I mean the nice thing about not having institutional LPs or being institutional. By background, I run the largest syndicate on AngelList. We can write a $5 million check into a $10 million round. We also have written $200,000 checks. We don't really care what percentage ownership we have. That's not a thing we measure. And recently, we've actually expanded the team, and we now run a total of 9 different syndicates. One of the things you'll also see when you're raising money is you can talk to people who are good at building companies. You can talk to people who are focused on building SaaS companies or fintech or Bitcoin or ad tech. And so there are also vertical VCs, people who really focus on a particular theme, or like Hunter again focuses on product. So we're now running a whole series of vertical syndicates. So if you're in SaaS or fintech or ad tech or marketplaces, we have separate groups of LPs and partners who are focused on those areas and can actually help more. But ultimately, it's I think you guys have said a couple good things. You want someone who's going to help. I want someone, because I've raised money a bunch of times, I want someone more emotionally involved than they should be. Honestly, more emotionally involved than they should be.
How do you know that when you see that? I'm going to interrupt you there.
Sure.
More emotionally involved than you need to be. Explain that for these people.
I see it in the pitch meeting. I see the guy who leans forward and says, I want to help. I mean, Reid Hoffman at Greylock is one of the best guys in the business at this, right? He leans in, he's taking notes. You will not get out of a meeting from him without 3 things that he's going to do to help you, right? So I want someone who's leaning in, who's helping before they've invested, because that's a really good sign that they're going to help after. And I've seen the opposite. I helped Fastly raise about $40 million a few months ago. And I went to meetings where the VCs said, I'll help with this, and I'll introduce you to that person. And I would follow up with a list of everything they said and get silence, which to me was a great signal that this is a person who talks a lot, doesn't listen much, and doesn't help. Like, I filter for people who are involved.
And deliver. Larry, what are you looking for?
So we have a very product-centric approach to screening, back to the point of know who you're speaking with. So I love to see a demo before even a meeting. So if I haven't seen a demo that just has fantastic wow factor, then I don't want to take a meeting because it's going to be a waste of both of our time, because I want product complete, and that's what this whole thing around the sprout stage, it's actually sprouted. So once the demo, we've been through the demo and it's great, then we really want to get to know you and your plan. And in terms of round size, I think it's really important to have like a great 6 to 12 month plan, because I think people think this is a very long-term investment business, because average holding periods can be 5, 7, even 10 years. But the reality is we're all investing in very short-term cycles, because if we don't create value during that next major turn of the crank, it means that we were early, and early is just the exact same thing as being wrong in our business.
Yes, Josh.
I think I really want to echo Gil's point about finding partners who are emotionally invested. I've done 4 deals since I became partner at Greylock, and in 2 of the deals there were guys that I'd worked with before and knew very well and felt lucky to work with again. But in 2 of the deals, they were folks where it took a number of conversations over a year from when I first met the entrepreneur to actually build the relationship and really build the connection and sort of understand the thesis they were going after before it made sense for us to do the round. And so I think investing in kind of the relationships with the people who you do see getting interested in what you're doing and sort of starting to build that emotional connection, it does take time. And I think there's a lot of people who look for a very fast deal, and it's just like dating. Like, there aren't that many times where you meet somebody and on the first date it goes so well that you're married 3 years later. And I always joke, but it's actually harder to divorce an investor off your cap table even than to actually do that for a marriage, unfortunately. So I think, like, it's just something to really think about. You really want to build a relationship. And I think the second thing that you really want to think about is building a thoughtful plan and building sort of a set of milestones that you hope to reach with the money is very useful exercise and shows the investors and people who are about to back you that you're really thoughtful about where you're going. I want to be clear though, nobody actually expects you to hold that plan or actually hit those milestones. Like, it's not about like setting a target that you have to do. It's about how thoughtful you are about articulating the steps forward in a plan, because you know that once the investor jumps in and is with you, that you're going to be looking at data every single day, every week, new people you can hire, new partners, new data from your users, and you're going to go lots of different directions. And every time you're going to have to be formulating new plans. And so it's much less about whether or not your plan is right or perfectly sound, as much as like, are you making really good assumptions based on the data you have today? And like, that's what we're always looking for, because the best people we think will make good assumptions today, will learn, will process, will make better assumptions tomorrow, and we'll keep making bets forward and forward and forward until things really start to work. And even then, you're still making bet after bet after bet. I mean, the amazing thing, even with giant companies like Apple or Facebook, is they make bet after bet after bet. They're like, we can build a tablet, we can build a watch, we can do this stuff. And like, that's what we're looking for in an entrepreneur who can keep learning and making new bets, not that we think your plan is so sound that we're going to hold you to it.
I want to take that just a little bit further, actually, which is a great point. One of the ways I get people emotionally involved is I don't do the typical new Silicon Valley 7-page deck that says, we're awesome, we have no competitors, and our shit doesn't stink. Right? And I see those every day now. Yeah. I go in, and I will admit I have sort of the luxury of being able to do this because people know I've done okay a couple times. But I go in and I say, we have problems. We have shit that's broken, and we have tough choices. And some people really love hearing that, right? They get excited, about, hey, I could help with that, or hey, I have insights, or hey. And I find that if you can get people to help you, even intellectually, to like engage in the problem that you're involved in and to feel the pain that you're going through, that's, not only is it great in terms of sort of that emotional bonding, but honestly, sometimes I get some really good advice too, which never hurts.
What are you guys looking for if it's not crappy pitch decks? I mean, help them out. What is it? If you don't want to pitch deck. What do you want? Just a summation?
For a story. Fundamentally, we're looking for a story of, all we're all trying to do here is create these things that 4 or 5 years in the future will be massive, important companies, products that tens or hundreds of millions of people use, or tens of thousands of people pay a lot of money for. And so you have to tell the story of like, here's what the world could look like if my thesis is right, and here's the first couple steps that I'm taking towards that thesis, and that I've already shown. I've made a couple bets already that are really good, whether it's just hiring this person or getting one customer to say they want to do it, or getting 10,000 users to start using your product every day, like whatever those little milestones are. And if you keep believing in this great vision I'm going for, that the story might actually play through. Like, fundamentally, that's what we're looking for. I find a pitch deck is often a great framework to tell that story in. So a deck can be very helpful to tell the story, but don't let the deck become more important than the story.
And the deck is an amazing way to build the story, but yeah. I don't really like going through decks very much. When people come in, I more want to just hear what they're about, hear their vision, look at the product and see where they really want to take it. And if you go back and you look at the deck afterwards, if the conversation went well, you probably talked about the content in each one of those slides, but you're trying to relate to an actual human being and develop that emotional connection, and you're not going to do that, staring at your screen or having them stare at the screen. They're better off staring at you.
I hate that I keep echoing you. Sell a vision. So,
say that again, what?
Sell the vision,
sell
right?
The vision.
So in my case, I'm building a company off of AngelList. First I had one syndicate, now I have vertical syndicates. Here's my sales pitch. I'm going to build the fidelity of this asset class, the Vanguard, the T. Rowe Price. We're going to build the largest asset manager that invests in every angel company in the room, and we're going to recruit all of you to help and be partners in it. We have a vision of democratizing what these people do.
I'm in.
I say that, and people go, check, right? Or they go, can I help? Or can I join the mailing list? Or can I be a partner? Like, And I've A/B tested that statement 1,000 times at cocktail parties. I tell it to people I don't know every day. And I try to get better at the cognitive load that that story takes and getting that cognitive load to zero. Getting to the point where I say something simple, the fidelity of angel investing with fund managers, and everyone goes, I get it. Wow. That's what I want.
Cool. Ryan, we're winding down. What final words of wisdom do you have for people on this stage?
Jeez, final words.
Yes.
You know, I think just going back to the amount of money raised, I think one of the things I see often is people try to raise too much because they think it's Series A and they got to raise 10. The thing that Paul mentioned earlier, it's a lot of dilution. I mean, sometimes for some teams, you can raise 10 million, 15 million Series A, you can go do it, you should. But for others, if you're still iterating, like Gil was saying, raise less. Yes, it's more risk because you got to go raise money again, you got to go deal with us again, another 12 months. I get it. That's not what everybody's dream is. But if you're building a company and you've got the vision, the story, everything you've kind of heard here, I think raising the right amount of money for what you're trying to accomplish is something to think hard about.
No matter the stage, whether it's seed or it sounded like you were talking more Series A.
I think no matter the stage. I mean, maybe when you get to be later, real later stages, breaking out, then it doesn't matter as much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Final words, final thoughts. Give these people some hope. No, Paul. We're good? Okay, well, thank you very much. How about a hand for these?
Great. Thank you.